I swear, if smugness were a currency, my wife would have been a billionaire. The night it all cracked open, I wasn't looking for answers. I was looking for the remote. That's the funny part. Life shatters not with grand betrayals on cliff edges, but with a man checking couch cushions for the TV remote. Instead, I found her phone wedged between the cushions. Lit up, unlocked, practically begging me to look. Now, I'm not a snooper by nature. But when a message pops up that reads, "Can't wait to taste you again tonight, winking face," curiosity doesn't kill the cat. It hands him a knife and points him toward the kitchen. I scrolled. It wasn't one message. It was a gallery of betrayal, dates, hotel names, even a selfie of her with some contractor we once paid to fix our deck. The same guy I once gave a beer to after a long day of work. That beer aged poorly. Here's what you need to know about me. I don't explode. I don't throw chairs through windows or scream at ceilings. I run on precision. I build machines that cut titanium. I manage men who measure twice so they don't bleed once. Anger is loud. Precision is quiet. So I set the phone back exactly where I found it, pressed between the cushions like it had never been touched. I grabbed the remote. Yes, it was under the coffee table, and I sat down. The game was still on. She was upstairs, probably rehearsing another excuse about late-night real estate calls. By halftime, I'd already decided I wouldn't confront her. Not yet. Not until every receipt was cataloged, every lie pinned neatly to the corkboard in my mind. Betrayal, I realized, was just sloppy bookkeeping. And I'm very, very good at balancing ledgers. "Hey," she called from upstairs, her voice fake sweet. "You didn't say goodnight." I smiled at the TV, knowing she couldn't see me. "Figured you were tired of touching me." Silence. Then a muttered, "You're being dramatic." "No, sweetheart. Dramatic is finding out your wife is sneaking around with a man who still thinks Axe body spray counts as cologne." I wasn't being dramatic. I was being exact. That night, I opened the old oak box I'd carved years ago, the one I'd meant to give her for our anniversary. Smooth edges, brass hinges. Empty. Until now. Because some men keep cuff links in their boxes. I keep evidence. The thing about betrayal? It leaves fingerprints. Not the neat, wipe it down kind. No, sloppy, greasy smudges everywhere. And my wife, Vanessa, was never the type to clean up after herself. I started small. Tuesday morning, while she was headed to a training, I checked the family iPad. She thought it was just for Netflix in the guest room. What she didn't realize was that her phone had been syncing to it for months. Automatic backup. Automatic leverage. Message after message scrolled by, and the contractor, Evan, wasn't her only extracurricular activity. Apparently, she had a work husband too, some finance clown she met at a brokerage dinner. His texts dripped with desperation. Hers with fake sweetness. "I needed last night." She typed once at 1:42 p.m. Funny, since at 1:42 p.m. she had told me she was stuck in a board meeting. I screenshotted everything. My fingers didn't shake. My pulse didn't spike. It felt more like filing quarterly taxes. Numbers in, numbers out. Order restored. By the time she rolled back into the house with that smug little half smile, I had a folder on my laptop called June Justice. Inside, screenshots of every text, forwarded emails with hotel receipts, a rental car agreement with her name as the driver, and a selfie of her with that deck fixer Evan, complete with the Burstone Hotel wallpaper in the background. Long day, I asked when she set her purse down. "The longest," she sighed dramatically. "God, you wouldn't understand." I almost laughed. If only she knew. Later that night, she tried to play affectionate. Crawled into bed wearing that robe she always thought was irresistible. She brushed my arm with her fingers. "Don't be cold to me, okay?" I didn't pull away. I smiled. Because men like me, we don't need second chances. We need evidence. She chuckled like I was joking. I wasn't. When she finally drifted off to sleep, I padded back to the office. The oak box was still on the desk. I slipped the first printed email inside, then the hotel receipt. The box clicked shut with a soft sound that felt like a lock on a vault. Evidence was the currency. Patience was the investment. And the dividend? That would come later. Much later, by the third week of collecting, I had more evidence than I'd ever need. Texts, calls, emails, receipts. Vanessa had built her own gallows, and I was just measuring the rope. But here's the thing. Once you've got the truth locked down, you stop reacting. And that's what spooked her. "Why are you so quiet lately?" she asked one morning, spooning yogurt into a glass like she was auditioning for a health commercial. I shrugged, listening more. To what? To the patterns. She laughed nervously, like she didn't get the joke. That's because it wasn't one. The first slip came that Friday. She told me she was working late, again. But thanks to the iPad, I knew she wasn't in any office. She was at a wine bar, giggling into her phone like a teenager. When she stumbled in past midnight, her excuse was lined up like always. We had to close the quarter. Long meetings. I didn't even look up from my book. Must have been a good meeting. You smell like Merlot. She froze for half a second, then recovered. There was a toast at the end. Sure, I said, turning the page. To love, laughter, and the guy who's been in your texts all week. Her eyes widened, but before she could speak, I smiled. Relax. I'm just teasing. The thing is, she wanted me angry. She wanted yelling, accusations, maybe a slammed door. Because then she could spin it. You're paranoid. You're insecure. You're crazy. That's how cheaters survive, by making their mess your madness. But I wasn't mad. I was meticulous. And nothing unsettles a liar more than silence and a smile. That Sunday, she cooked dinner, her big specialty, salmon she always undercooked, and set the table like we were in some romantic montage. Halfway through, she leaned in and touched my hand. You'd tell me if something was wrong, right? I looked her in the eye. Of course. And you'd tell me if something was wrong, too, wouldn't you? She blinked, hesitated just long enough for me to know she felt the trap, then forced a smile. Of course. We finished dinner in silence. And I swear, for the first time in years, she actually looked nervous. Because what Vanessa didn't realize was this. I wasn't her opponent anymore. I was her historian. And history, once written, can't be undone. You know how some people think silence is weakness? That if you don't scream, throw plates, or storm out of the room, you must be powerless? That's the exact mistake Vanessa made. The truth was, silence is the sharpest tool I had. And by now, I was wielding it like a scalpel. It started with little things. I began keeping odd hours, not because I had to, but because I wanted her guessing. I'd leave the house early, well before she was up. No explanation. I'd come back late, smelling of fresh coffee and cold air, not a word about where I'd been. In reality, I was sitting in the corner booth at Pete's Diner, reading and cataloging more evidence on my laptop. But in her head, I was either suspicious or distracted by something she didn't control. Either option unsettled her, which was exactly the point. One night she asked, "Where do you go so early?" I didn't look up from my coffee. "Same place you do?" "Out." She laughed a little too loud. "Funny." I smiled back calm. "I thought so." See, Vanessa had been running this playbook for years, making me feel like the dull, dependable placeholder while she fluttered around pretending to still be 25. But placeholders don't take risks. Placeholders don't vanish without explanation. So when I started breaking her expectations, she panicked. Another move, money. She never noticed bills, not really. I handled them. She was too busy buying designer yoga pants or posting real estate selfies in houses we didn't own. But suddenly, she couldn't get her nails done without the card being declined. Couldn't swipe at Target without an error. Something's wrong with the bank, she snapped one afternoon, waving her phone like it had betrayed her. No, I said evenly. Something's wrong with you assuming the bank is infinite. She squinted, searching for the fight that wasn't there. Are you cutting me off? I sipped my coffee. No, just correcting the math. What she didn't know was that I'd already moved half of our liquid assets into an account under my name only. Clean. Legal. My lawyer had walked me through the steps months ago when I first suspected. I wasn't just playing catch-up. I'd been preparing the entire time she thought I was asleep at the wheel. The third move was social. Vanessa lived for appearances. The curated Instagram feed. The wine nights with the girls. The posts about date night with the hubby that I usually didn't even know about until someone at work said, "Nice restaurant, huh?" So I stopped showing up. She planned a dinner party with her brokerage friends. Sent out invites with my name on them. I got the text, "Don't be late tonight, babe. Wear the navy suit. We need to look solid." I didn't reply. She called me 5 times when the guests were arriving. I let them ring. Sat in the garage, lights off, listening to the clock tick while I ate takeout Chinese. When I finally walked in, 3 hours late, the guests were gone, the dishes stacked in the sink, and Vanessa stood there seething in her cocktail dress. "Where the hell were you?" she hissed, hands on hips. I hung my jacket calmly. "Out." "With who?" I tilted my head. Funny question. You don't usually care where I am. That one landed. I could see it in her eyes, the flicker of uncertainty. For once, she wasn't the one holding the secret. Here's what's funny. I didn't need to invent an affair. I didn't need to lie. The power wasn't in having someone else. It was in letting her wonder if I did. By now, the oak box in my office was nearly full. Hotel receipts, screenshots, copies of her texts to Evan, the contractor, and to Derek, her brokerage buddy. Each piece of paper slid in with the same sound. Click. A lock tightening. A cage forming. But I wasn't rushing. No. I wanted her to stew. To feel the walls close in slowly, one silent inch at a time. One night, as we sat in bed, she tried again. Her voice was unusually soft, almost pleading. You've been distant lately. Is something going on? I closed my book and set it on the nightstand. Yes. Her eyes widened. What do you mean, yes? Exactly what it sounds like. I turned off the light and lay down. Left her staring into the dark, questions gnawing at her. The next morning, she made pancakes. From scratch. With blueberries. She hadn't cooked in months. That's how I knew it was working. The stronger I got, the weaker she became. And the best part? She had no idea what I was building in that oak box, or that the man she once dismissed as dull was stacking every piece of her betrayal like bricks in a wall she wouldn't climb over. Every day, I smiled a little more. Every day, she laughed a little less. And every day, I reminded myself of one truth. The cruelest revenge isn't in shouting. It's in precision. If Vanessa was good at anything, it was pretending. She could pour a glass of wine, flash her veneers, and laugh like nothing in the world had ever gone wrong. But a mask is only as strong as the cracks beneath it, and I'd been chiseling away with a smile. The first real fracture came on a Tuesday evening. She walked into the kitchen wearing that silk blouse she only dusted off when she wanted to feel powerful. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed, eyes sharp. You've changed, she said flatly. I didn't even glance up from slicing an apple. Good. Staying the same is boring. Her lips twitched. She hadn't expected me to own it. Normally, I'd defend myself, reassure her, smooth the edges. Not anymore. You're secretive, she pressed. I popped an apple slice in my mouth. Chewed. Swallowed. Takes one to know one. That shut her up for a beat. She tried to laugh it off, but it came out thin, brittle. 2 days later, she struck again. This time with sweetness instead of suspicion. Dinner, candles, her phone accidentally left face down for once. She even made my favorite, lasagna. Though she overcooked it so badly it resembled a burnt brick. Halfway through, she reached for my hand. I feel like we've drifted. Maybe we should. I don't know, do a weekend getaway. Just us. Reconnect. That almost made me laugh. Reconnect? Like she was inviting me to patch a bridge she'd already set on fire. Instead, I squeezed her hand lightly. I've already got plans this weekend. Her eyes narrowed. Plans? With who? With myself? I said calmly. Try it sometime. Might do you good. The smile froze on her face. She dropped my hand, stabbed at her lasagna, and said nothing else. By now, she was paranoid. I could see it in the way she checked my pockets when she did laundry, the way she studied my face when I got home late, the way she lingered by the garage door like she expected to hear a woman's voice. It amused me. She had no idea that my mistress wasn't a person, it was patience. And patience never betrays you. Meanwhile, the oak box was filling up. I added a printed transcript of her texts to Evan, a credit card statement showing charges from the Burstone Hotel, and even a few candid photos I'd had a private investigator snap. Nothing dramatic, just her walking out of a hotel lobby with a man whose hand lingered too long on her back. Evidence. Plain, simple, undeniable. One night, I slid another document into the box, the latest printout of our joint account, showing a mysterious $3,200 withdrawal. Vanessa was careless with her secrets, but I wasn't careless with math. The turning point came at her friend's birthday dinner. I hadn't wanted to go, but I knew my presence would serve a purpose. Vanessa was dolled up, laughing too loud, clinking glasses with her little circle of real estate friends. I sat at the far end of the table, sipping water, watching. Then one of her friends, Celeste, leaned over and whispered just a little too loudly. So, did you ever tell him about Ridge Hill? Vanessa's face drained of color. She forced a laugh. Shut up, Celeste. I smiled into my glass. Ridge Hill. Another breadcrumb. Later that night, I cross-referenced her supposed conference trip with hotel bookings. And there it was, a weekend rental, her name on the form, 2 guests listed. Not me. Into the oak box it went. Click. By now, she was the one pacing the house at night, checking her phone obsessively, watching me like a hawk, waiting for me to explode, to demand answers, to give her something to play the victim against. But I didn't explode. I watered the plants, fixed the leaky faucet, read my books, smiled at her in passing. And that's what drove her crazy. One night, she couldn't take it anymore. She cornered me in the bedroom. "Are you cheating on me?" she demanded, eyes wide, voice trembling just enough to betray the fear behind the performance. I chuckled. "That's funny. Answer me," she snapped. I stood, walked to the mirror, and adjusted my tie. Calm. Measured. "Vanessa, if I was, you'd already know. You're good at sniffing out betrayal. Almost professional." Her jaw dropped. For once, she was speechless. I kissed her cheek lightly, picked up my jacket, and walked out. Left her standing there with the taste of her own medicine. The next morning, she tried again with a softer approach. "I just feel like we're not connected," she said quietly over coffee. "If there's something wrong, tell me. Please." I stirred my cup slowly. "There's nothing wrong. Just balance." "Balance? Yeah. You took your share of freedom. Now I'm taking mine." She blinked, searching for the meaning. I didn't clarify. Let her stew. Ambiguity was better than anger. By now, I had everything I needed. Proof of her affairs. Financial records that would shield me in divorce. Testimony from friends who had slipped up, not realizing I was listening. The oak box wasn't just full, it was overflowing. But I wasn't ready to strike yet. Not until she truly understood that she wasn't the one playing chess anymore. So I staged a little test. I left a single sheet of paper, one of her hotel receipts, sitting just barely visible under a stack of bills on the desk. Not obvious, but enough that if she snooped, she'd see it. That evening, she came into the office, pretending to tidy up. 15 minutes later, the receipt was gone. I smiled. Perfect. She had just confirmed she was scared, that she knew the walls were closing in. The next day, she was sweeter than ever. Made breakfast, kissed my cheek, sent me a text in the middle of the day. "Love you, Red Heart." First one in months. Maybe years. But I knew the truth. She wasn't rediscovering love. She was bargaining with fear. And fear, once it shows its face, can never be hidden again. That was when I realized something crucial. Vanessa wasn't worried about losing me. She was worried about losing what I represented: security, money, reputation, the stable man she could mock in private but parade in public. And that realization changed everything. Because I wasn't just planning to end it. I was planning to end it in a way that stripped her of the very things she'd taken for granted. The oak box wasn't just evidence anymore. It was a weapon. And soon, I'd open it. The thing about lies is they need constant oxygen. Vanessa had been feeding hers for months, maybe years, but now the air was thinning. And I was the one closing the windows. It started subtly. One morning, I left a manila envelope on the kitchen counter, half open, like I'd forgotten it. Inside, printouts of her messages to Evan, the contractor. Not the explicit ones, just the ones that looked plausibly innocent to anyone who didn't know the context. Lunch was amazing. "Let's do that again soon," winking face. Enough to rattle her, but not enough to prove anything outright. When I came home that night, the envelope was gone. She didn't mention it. Neither did I. But her hands shook when she poured her wine. That was enough. The next move came 2 days later. We were sitting at the table, me with a book, her scrolling Instagram. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. A text from Derek. She snatched it up like a teenager hiding a diary. I didn't look at her. Just said, casually, "Funny how contractors and brokers always text at night. Do they bill you for that overtime?" Her fork froze midair. "What are you talking about?" "Nothing," I said, turning the page. "Just noticing patterns." She laughed too loud, too fast. "You're paranoid." "Maybe," I replied. "But the thing about paranoia, it's only wrong if there's nothing there." Her face dropped, but I didn't look up. I let her sit with it. Let her feel the silence pressing on her ribs. By now, the oak box was nearly overflowing. Receipts, texts, photos, bank statements. I'd even added screenshots of her Instagram posts, the ones where she tagged herself at open houses that weren't listed anywhere. Sloppy, lazy breadcrumbs, each one falling straight into my hands. But I wasn't hoarding evidence just for divorce court. No, I was building a story. one she couldn't rewrite. So I started hinting at it, dropping phrases she'd once used against me. You move like you're buffering, she'd joked once in front of friends. Now, as we got ready for bed, I muttered it under my breath while tying my shoes. She whipped her head around. What did you say? I smiled faintly. Nothing. Just thinking. Her eyes narrowed. She knew. She just didn't know how much I knew. The real crack came at Sunday brunch. We were out with friends, the usual couples she loved to perform in front of. Midway through her third mimosa, she leaned in, hand on my arm, voice dripping with fake sweetness. Tell them how we met, she said, grinning at me like we were in some rom-com montage. I took a sip of coffee, calm as stone. Sure. We met at the Burstone Hotel. Her smile collapsed. The table went quiet. One of the women laughed awkwardly. Wait, wasn't that the place you two stayed years later? Must be, I said smoothly. Funny how hotels repeat themselves. Vanessa's face flushed crimson. She coughed, changed the subject, but I could feel her pulse racing through the grip of her hand still on my arm. When we got home, she pounced. What the hell was that supposed to mean? I set my keys on the counter. Exactly what it sounded like. Her eyes flared. You think you're clever, don't you? Just say it. Say whatever you think you know. I turned, met her gaze evenly. Why would I say it? I'd rather show it. Her breath caught. She blinked, confused, panicked. Show what? I smiled faintly. When it matters. And I walked out of the room, leaving her shaking. The paranoia consumed her after that. She started checking the mail before I could, peeking at my laptop screen when she thought I wasn't looking. Once, she even went into the office and rifled through drawers. Joke was on her. I'd already moved the oak box into the safe behind the garage tool bench, a place she'd never look. Her tactics grew desperate. She started buying me gifts, shirts I didn't need, whiskey I didn't drink, tickets to games she knew nothing about. It was like watching someone bribe a prison guard while the cell door was already locked. One night, she tried the nuclear option. Tears. Real ones, or maybe just good acting. I feel like we're falling apart, she whispered in bed. Can we just reset? Forget all the stupid stuff and start over. I rolled onto my side, met her wet eyes. Sure, we can reset. Just one question, though. She sniffled. What? Do you want me to forget Ridge Hill or the Burstone? Her whole body went still. The tears froze. For once, she had no script. I kissed her forehead, turned off the lamp, and left her staring into the dark. The truth is, I didn't need to catch her anymore. I already had everything. The oak box wasn't evidence. It was leverage. It was the blade hanging over her head, and every day she felt the rope fray a little thinner. But revenge isn't about the blade falling. It's about letting them live under it long enough to know it's coming. So I waited. Calm, steady, patient. Because the cruelest part of betrayal isn't being caught. It's realizing you never stood a chance against the person you underestimated most. Why now? Vanessa wasn't living in our house anymore. She was living in minefield. Every word I spoke felt like a tripwire. Every silence felt like a fuse burning toward her. The cracks widened fast. One evening she stormed into the kitchen, eyes blazing. If you've got something to say, just say it. I looked up from my paperwork. Calm. All right, I'll say it. I know. Her breath hitched. Know what? I leaned back in my chair. Everything. She laughed nervously, clutched her wine glass like a lifeline. You're being ridiculous. Maybe, I said softly. But I'm also being thorough. I slid a manila folder across the table. She opened it, and her face drained. Emails, texts, receipts, photos. All lined up, organized by date, time, and location. Her voice cracked. You've been spying on me? No, I said, sipping my coffee. I've been documenting you. Big difference. She tried to bluster, but her hands shook too much. You can't use this against me. Judges don't care about affairs anymore. I smiled. Courts don't, maybe. But banks, clients, and friends? They care about reputation. For the first time in years, Vanessa was silent. That week, I began phase 2. I forwarded select screenshots, carefully chosen, context-rich, to her brokerage's HR department. Not enough to scream scandal, just enough to raise eyebrows. Concern these messages between your agent and a client might be unprofessional. Anonymous sender. Within days, whispers spread. Her calls slowed. Her boss suggested she take some personal time. Meanwhile, I froze the joint accounts. Every card she swiped came back declined. She stormed home with shopping bags she couldn't pay for. What did you do? She spat, throwing the empty credit card at me. Corrected the math, I said. Her jaw trembled. You can't just. I can, I interrupted. And I did. By Friday, she was begging me for explanations. Begging. The same woman who once told me I was lucky she let me touch her now stood in our kitchen with mascara streaked down her face, whispering, "Please, don't ruin me." I just smiled. That's up to you. Then came the final act. Our anniversary was approaching. She tried to stage a grand gesture. Reservations at a fancy restaurant, new dress, even a speech rehearsed in front of the mirror. But I had my own plans. That night, instead of showing up at the restaurant, I was in the living room with Noah, our nephew, who adored me, and my lawyer. Together, we watched as Vanessa walked into the restaurant alone. At exactly 7 p.m., her phone buzzed. A message from me. Happy anniversary. The divorce papers are on the table. I had already signed. Assets moved. House secured. Oak box emptied into 3 copies. One for the lawyer, one for the court, one for her boss. She came home later, eyes red, clutching the papers like they were a live grenade. You blindsided me, she whispered. I stood calmly. No, you blindsided yourself. I just kept the receipts. She collapsed into a chair. You can't leave me with nothing. I placed a small envelope on the table. Inside, a single dollar bill. Congratulations, I said evenly. That's more than you're worth to me now. Here's the twist. Most people expect the story to end with me kicking her out, burning her clothes, finding someone new. But that's not my ending. My revenge wasn't about theatrics. It was about precision. I didn't scream. I didn't throw her stuff on the lawn. I didn't humiliate her in public. No, I let her do that herself. Within a month, the brokerage cut her loose to protect the company's image. Her Range Rover? Repossessed, she'd leased it in her name, without telling me, on credit she no longer had. Her so-called friends? Vanished, once they realized siding with her meant risking their own reputations. And me? I kept the house, kept my accounts, kept my peace. One evening, weeks after the papers were finalized, I found her sitting in the driveway in a beat-up sedan, hair unwashed, eyes hollow. She rolled down the window. Why? She whispered. Why didn't you just yell, or fight, or, I don't know, forgive me? I leaned down, looked her dead in the eye. Because forgiveness is mercy, and mercy is wasted on you. She flinched, tried to speak, couldn't. I straightened, walked back inside, and shut the door. And that was it. No fireworks, no screaming, just the quiet satisfaction of knowing I hadn't just ended the marriage. I dismantled the myth of her power, piece by piece, until she was left with exactly what she deserved. Nothing.